This is the BBC. For details of our complete range of programmes, go to bbcworldservice.com/podcasts.
Welcome to the latest global news compiled in the early hours of Friday the 18th of November. I'm Jackie Leonard with a selection of highlights from across BBC World Service News today. Coming up.
By the year 2050, we're going to need 70% more food. This can really answer this.
Could science save the planet by improving photosynthesis? Also, how easy is it to stand as an independent candidate in China's elections? The answer, not very.
It's my right to stand for election, she begins to tell me, before 3 or 4 men push her inside and then lean against the door.
Also in this podcast, America's largest bank, JP Morgan Chase, has been fined $250 million for corrupt hiring practices, and 2 political heavyweights prepare to enter the fray in France. But first, it's being called a scientific breakthrough which could help feed the world's growing population. Researchers in the US and Britain say they've developed a way of increasing crop production by improving the process of photosynthesis. The lead researcher, Professor Stephen Long, told the BBC how it could answer the planet's burgeoning demand for food.
By the year 2050, we're going to need 70% more food. This can really answer this issue, and particularly the areas of the world where food shortages are likely to be most acute.
Our science reporter Victoria Gill told us how.
What they've done is use a genetic modification technique, actually, in the laboratory, and they've done it in tobacco, weirdly enough, but tobacco, because it's sort of a genetic template. We know so much about it that it provides a really good biological template to be able to test what genes make a plant grow in the way that it does. And what they've done in this tobacco plant is that they've targeted a sun protection mechanism that's inbuilt into the plant. Plants have a way of protecting themselves from too much sun damage by switching into a protective mode where they divert some of that extra energy as heat. Now, when that continues, it means they're not using the maximum amount of sunlight to grow. So these researchers have added extra copies of genes that switch them back into the more efficient sun-using process. So essentially, they've engineered plants that will be able to use more sunlight to grow bigger and faster.
And how serious is the need?
Well, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization suggests that the need will be in the future very great indeed, that we're not keeping pace in the crop technologies that we have and the amount that we can grow and increase yield in our crops with the pace of population growth. So we'll need 70% more food to feed the world by 2050, when we'll have more than 9 billion people on the planet compared to 7 billion now. So this is an investment into the future, because when these things happen in the laboratory, it then takes a very long time for them to be upscaled and bred into foods that we can eat, because actually genetic modification won't be used in food that we can consume. This is a technique used in the lab to find out how you tune a plant to make it grow bigger and faster, and then you use other techniques to breed that safely into foods that we eat, so that we can upscale that and grow it in the farmers' fields, so that we can get this out there in the next 20 years or so to be growing food more sustainably.
So that's the question. We aren't likely to see this stuff on the shelves for some time yet.
Yeah, exactly. This is a technique used in the laboratory, but scientifically it's a huge breakthrough, because actually there's been decades of discussion as to whether you could tune photosynthesis and change photosynthesis to make plants grow better. Photosynthesis is the most important process arguably on the planet. It's the source of all of our food. It's the reason we have oxygen to breathe. So it's been studied intensively, but this is the first time it's been adjusted successfully in a way in a crop where they can actually get more yield out of that crop by essentially making photosynthesis better, more efficient.
Victoria Gill, our science reporter. When Donald Trump won the US presidential election last week, he defied expectations by winning support from large numbers of white women and working-class voters, especially in once Democrat strongholds. But for all the talk of his working-class support, there was another issue on which this election was fought, and that was race and immigration. So how will those on opposite sides of the divide in America move forward? Aleem Makboul reports from Georgia.
It's not all about working-class men. In the affluent streets of Forsyth County, with its vast column-fronted homes, others are celebrating a Trump victory too.
I love the fact that he's not politically correct. I love the fact that he's upfront, honest, says it like it is, shoots from the hip. I love the fact that he really does want to take care of our American people.
Darcy Butkus said she felt Donald Trump was the first politician in her lifetime to really represent her views.
I don't want to be in the minority. This is America. And when you go down to South Florida, I'm sorry, whether it's Fort Lauderdale or Miami, I'm going to say it like it is. There's a lot of different ethnic groups, and I felt like I was in the minority.
Darcy, in fact, moved to this part of Georgia because it was mainly white.
I think that he's exacerbating issues of sexism and racism.
A world away in diverse Manhattan lives Darcy's daughter, Rachel.
I haven't even said the sentence out loud that Trump will be our... No, I can't. It's so difficult that he's going to be our president.
Rachel was a Clinton supporter whose relationship with her mother has been strained because of the election, particularly their very different outlooks on multiculturalism.
I love learning about different cultures and their languages and their food and everything in that realm. And I think for her, she felt what a lot of Trump supporters feel. They're not speaking our language. They don't love America like we do.
Rachel worries Trump's victory will inspire more bigotry from those who voted for him.
People feel we're the majority and we're going to say what we think is right, and we felt suppressed, and now let's make America great again.
This bruising election exposed deep divisions in American society, even within families, especially around the issues of race, diversity and immigration. How the two sides now come together is one of the biggest challenges this country faces.
Ali Makboul in Georgia. On the other side of the world from America, an even larger election is taking place, at least in size. Starting this week, an electorate of 900 million in China are selecting more than 2.5 million deputies to fill the local people's congresses up and down the country. The Communist Party has been highly critical of what it sees as the farce of American democracy. But as our Beijing correspondent John Sudworth has been finding out, it's not so keen on scrutiny of its own system.
We've come to interview a woman who's doing something very brave in China, trying to stand for election as an independent candidate. As we approach her door, our path is blocked.
Can you explain what you're doing? As soon as we got out the car, we have an invitation to speak to this woman who is simply trying to exercise her legal right to stand for election, and straight away these plainclothed policemen, we can only assume is what they are, have blocked our way into her house. I'll just try and knock on the door.
I managed to make contact with the door by stretching my arm around the silent, sinister men standing shoulder to shoulder in front of me.
Miss Liu, hello.
Finally, Liu Huizhen opens the door.
So we're hoping we can come in and talk to you.
Yes, she answers. Come in. But it's no use. I can't get through. And by now, the men have called for reinforcements. It's my right to stand for election, she begins to tell me, before 3 or 4 men push her inside and then lean against the door. China often uses unidentified thugs to deal with sensitive issues, and there are few issues more sensitive here than democracy. At this polling station in Beijing, people are turning out to vote. This week it's Beijing's turn, but by early next year, hundreds of millions of people will have voted in district elections right across China. In theory, they're open to any candidate. In reality, the Communist Party decides who's on the ballot.
2016年美国大选丑闻频出，猛料不断，
选举乱象，美国病得不行，
令美国选民倍感失望。
This year, China's elections have coincided with another election halfway across the world. The US campaign has been covered by Chinese state media as a case study in all that's wrong with Western democracy. It's been described as sick, chaotic and farcical. But China, of course, has its share of discord and dissent, underlined by the 30 thugs now surrounding Liu Huijian's home.
So China has made huge capital out of what it sees as the farce and the circus of the US election, the huge effort and expense that goes into an artificial choice. But what we can see here quite clearly is the huge effort and expense that China puts in to stopping people exercising their democratic rights.
Behind the confidence and strength lies a deep insecurity. We're manhandled away, dragged and pushed towards our car. This heavy-handed control is a measure of the threat that China sees in even one would-be independent candidate.
John Sudworth in Beijing. The largest bank in the United States, JP Morgan Chase, has been fined $250 million for hiring friends and relatives of Chinese officials in return for government contracts. The bank has been under investigation for 3 years over its hiring practices. Our Asia-Pacific editor, Michael Bristow, told us more.
What JP Morgan did from 2006 is they set up a scheme called the Sons and Daughters Programme, in which they hired the sons and daughters and relatives and friends of Chinese high-ranking bureaucrats, people in senior positions in state-run companies. They hired them to work within the bank. They did that in order to facilitate banking deals with these Chinese companies.
Why would they do it that way? Surely there are other ways to do business with China.
Well, there are a couple of reasons why doing business in China is quite difficult. Number one, personal connections matters a great deal, often more than official positions. So the idea is that we hire the son or daughter of, say, a senior business person on a state-run company. This company wants to go public. It's looking to hire a bank to facilitate that. What better way than hiring the son and daughter of this business person in order to get at them and convince them that JP Morgan is the best company to do that deal?
Now, they have been presented with this large fine. Does this mean that they're going to have to change the way they do business? Will other banks be changing the way they do business?
Well, it appears, firstly, that some other banks might be under investigation by the US authorities concerning their business practices in China. And I'm sure they're going to have to change their practices. I mean, the US law is quite clear about this. It bans American companies from bribing foreign officials in order to facilitate business deals. What JP Morgan said to get round it was that, well, we're not actually bribing anyone. We're just hiring people to work in our bank. They just happen to be sons and daughters of famous business people. But it was quite clear when a lot of this came out, when the investigation unearthed all the evidence, that a lot of the people they were hiring were unqualified and unsuitable for the jobs that they were hired to do. And as the US Attorney General said, this is corruption, plain and simple.
That was our Asia-Pacific editor, Michael Bristow. You're listening to Global News, the best stories, interviews and on-the-spot reporting from the BBC World Service. Remember that every weekend you can hear a review of the week's main news stories and why they matter. That's In the World this week. It's broadcast on Saturdays and Sundays, and it's available to download from our website. On Sunday, there'll be a primary contest to decide the centre-right candidate for the French presidential elections next year. 7 candidates from the opposition Republican Party are standing, with a runoff to be held the following weekend. Polls suggest that whoever wins the nomination may well win the presidency, and the main battle is between the flamboyant former president Nicolas Sarkozy and the urbane former Prime Minister Alain Juppé. Our Paris correspondent Lucy Williamson reports on the return of the man once known as France's bling-bling president.
It's easy to feel popular while besieged by fans queuing for your latest book. But Nicolas Sarkozy has always been the Marmite of French politics. There are those who hate him and those who really, really love him.
He's a good person who we admire. He's committed, true to his word, faithful. He keeps his promises.
He's very energetic and hardworking. He can do lots of things because he has courage and experience.
The far right in France has benefited from voters' frustration with the same familiar faces in power. But Thomas Miachon has supported Mr Sarkozy since he was 13 years old and says the former president is an old face with new ideas.
Of course we need sometimes new faces, but today, in the multi-crisis we are in, we are in war, we are in a big economic crisis, we really need a strong leader, and I think that Nicolas Sarkozy has this vision of the future, which is positive but also real. He got new strong ideas to fight the terrorism, and we have two choices. They win or we win, and they cannot win, so we will fight them until the end.
Si les djihadistes qui reviennent ont la double nationalité, on leur retire la nationalité française et on les met dehors. Immédiatement.
In the televised primary debates, Mr Sarkozy has taken a tough approach to terrorism, suggesting preventative detention for those suspected of involvement. He's also said that immigrants should adopt France's historical ancestors and culture, and that the Muslim veil should be banned in public places. His critics say he's hunting for votes on the same ground as the far-right Front National and helping the rise of populism in France.
Sarkozy, when he ran for presidency 10 years ago, was much more open on all these questions.
Alain Manc was a friend and supporter of Mr Sarkozy during his last two presidential runs. Not this time.
I think that he remains in the depths of his mind liberal, but he has decided to take a political position which is quite anti-Muslim, quite extreme right. He wants to get primary votes coming from people who now are voting for the Front National. That's his bet. I think it's not a clever bet, because each time he wins one vote of that kind, he's losing, I think, 2 votes from moderates.
But when we met up with Nicolas Sarkozy at his book signing, he strongly denied he shared any values with the far right.
That's what journalists say. It's not at all what the people think. We have nothing in common. I'm the one who has been most criticised by the far right. I've always refused to make a deal with the far right, so it doesn't match reality. If Miss Le Pen says she prefers nice weather to rain, then I share that value.
The former president is the favourite in his party, but he's trailing behind former Prime Minister Alain Juppé among voters in general, all of whom can take part in the primary if they choose. Both men are predicted to beat the Front National in the final presidential race, but polls say Mr Juppé would win by a wider margin, and that's important to those like Alain Manc who want to keep the far right from power.
If the Front National lose by 30%, I think that they will explode, because there are 2 Front National. One in the north of France, who is anti-religious, very socialist, quite leftist. And one in the south, which accepts the euro, which is economically speaking liberal and Catholic. The only thing which helps them to stick together is the prospect of winning one day. If they think that there is a glass ceiling, they will explode.
Nicolas Sarkozy is known for his trademark glitz and charisma on the campaign trail, and his rallies are still lively affairs, with plenty of booing for incumbent President François Hollande. Some believe the strain of fighting so hard for this nomination is starting to show. But after the election of Donald Trump across the Atlantic, Mr Sarkozy seems galvanised once again by what he believes is an international desire for change.
Lucy Williamson in Paris. Scientists say they can now describe in detail how the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs produced its huge crater. The modelling of the event millions of years ago shows how the asteroid smashed into the Earth and made the hard surface of the planet slosh back and forth like a fluid. Our science correspondent Jonathan Amos explained how the researchers uncovered the new findings.
We know about this great event that occurred on Earth 66 million years ago, probably the most significant event in the last 100 million years on Earth. So not only does it wipe out the dinosaurs, but it creates that niche for mammals to rise up, obviously us as well. So it's very important. And it has this crater that was made in what is now the Gulf of Mexico. And for a number of years, scientists have been trying to drill into this crater. And earlier this year, they did. They went down.
And what have they found so far?
Well, they pulled out rocks from down to about a kilometre. And from the nature of them, they can confirm various models. So they take us through the production of this crater. So imagine this 15-kilometre wide stony asteroid comes in towards the Earth at a speed something like 20 kilometres a second. Okay. Instantly, it punches a cavity in the surface of the Earth, about 30 kilometres deep, about 100 kilometres wide. Now, that structure is unstable, so the sides start to collapse inwards. At the same time, the centre of the hole rebounds. And so the rock that's been pushed down suddenly rises up, and it rises up about 10 kilometres above the surface of the Earth, the normal surface of the Earth. So you're instantly creating a series of mountains higher than the Himalayas within a few minutes. And of course that collapses as well to produce the crater feature that is now buried under ocean sediments, as I say, in the Gulf of Mexico. And what's interesting about this is that it tells us something about the energy that was involved. Clearly, it was a massive event, really energetic, 100 million atomic bombs, something like that. And that goes to explaining then the environmental changes that occurred as a result of the impact. So all this material had been thrown out into the sky, up into the atmosphere. It would have darkened the sky for months, perhaps years on end. The global climate would have suddenly cooled. And so you can see why certain species might have struggled in that situation. So it really is starting to unpick some of the detail now of what happened in this really important event 66 million years ago.
That was our science correspondent, Jonathan Amos. Mansplaining is that all too common phenomenon where men in meetings, at parties, in any sort of company really, decide they need to explain things simply to women. Still don't get it? Here's TV host Jimmy Kimmel doing some mansplaining to Hillary Clinton on his show.
I know you think of your husband as your secret weapon, but I have something. I feel like I am going to be your secret weapon now because I'm going to help you win this election, no problem. Are you familiar with mansplaining? Do you know what that is?
Yeah, that's when a man explains something to a woman in a patronizing way.
Actually, it's when a man explains something to a woman in a condescending way. But you were close.
Well, in Sweden, so concerned is one trades union about the problem of mansplaining that it set up a hotline for workers to talk about it. And helping to answer calls this week is the Swedish comedian Moa Svan. Presumably, Tim Franks put it to her, most of the calls are from women.
Well, no, there's been a few men, some of them to tell me, to explain to me in a very manly way how this should have been done better for them to understand. Not because they're stupid, because other men might be offended and, maybe they have also encountered mansplaining and shouldn't call women'splaining. And, I say, thank you very much for your opinion. This is great for me. And
have the men given up calling?
Well, they were angry for one day and then they sort of like, right, I told my opinion of things. Now I can do something better with my time. Okay. So,
I mean,
yeah,
were they open to what you had to say?
Well, not really. There's this basically one dude and he was just talking for 7 minutes and telling me that, men are generally more likely to be geniuses and so on. And I was like, oh, right. Well, okay. Now I know.
Gosh. In terms of the women who have been calling, has there been a sort of a desire for people to sort of find out tactics of how to deal with overbearing men in meetings, or has it just been more about sharing stories of men dominating conversations?
Well, no, I think it's been really nice because, today I had a really great conversation with a woman who, I do some comedy and some feminist writing in Sweden and, she's written my things. So that was just lovely that she was like, okay, so now we can actually talk about this. And I sort of gave her my general advice is that talk to other women where you are. She was studying, and I was like, find another woman that you can discuss this with, because what you don't really feel like doing when you are at work or studying as a woman is sort of interrupting and say, excuse me, I feel discriminated here. You don't really do that. I don't think you should have to, but what you should do instead, if you want to sort of still have a career as a woman, is that you sort of help each other instead, because it's easier to help someone else than actually stand up for yourself, because, you know, there's a lot of shame into that as well. When someone just steals your idea, if you say something, I have an idea, and then, you know, a man goes up and says, oh, I have an idea, and it's your idea, and everybody hears that he stole your idea, but no sense in it. You can sort of feel a bit of shame, you know, really. So we talked a little bit about shame, and also, you know, that it's easier to help each other, really.
I know that you're a comedian. Is there part of you that thinks that actually mansplaining is not particularly a source of great comic potential? It's just so dreary and dull and predictable that, in fact, you don't want to dwell on it.
Well, I mean, I could be a boring comedian as well, but I think it helps to laugh about it, really. And the worst thing is, you know, when male comedians sort of come up to me with advice, not only on how to tell my jokes, because they think I need that, but also about how women should tell jokes in order to sort of survive sexism. And I'm like, you know, but you are actually a man. You could just quit your job and make the world better for me. You know, that's the easiest way, really. But thank you so much for telling me how women should be, you know, less offended by sexism.
That was Swedish comedian Moa Svan talking to Tim Franks, who never mansplains. Finally, an unexpected pitch invasion led to an early break in proceedings in the cricket match between India and England in Visakhapatnam. Test match specials Jonathan Agnew and Michael Vaughan react.
Here's Broad, moving in now, bowling outside the off stump, saying, drive it, go on. But Pujara does. We've got a dog on the field. I tell you what, I've not seen one of these for a very long time. And the last one I saw, I can tell exactly where it was. It was in Guyana at the old border ground. He disgraced himself, and the groundsman had to reach for his shovel. So I'm hoping that's not going to happen. Yeah, well, he's running around. He's not quite sure where he's going at the moment. But the groundsman, I think, has appeared. And here they come, a couple of security men coming on, and the dog will simply run the other way. I'm pretty sure of that. They're coming quite quickly at him.
Yeah,
the dog,
he's going to do that. Go on.
Is he going to surrender? No, he's off. Nice little shimmy there.
Got no chance.
He was like a fly half there, a quick dummy and off, and pursuing him into the shadows.
In the dressing room.
And happily, no need for the groundsman's shovel, which was an awkward moment at the border ground.
He's back.
He is back.
He's come back.
He is back, and he's now at long off.
He's gone straight in the dressing room, had a sit down, had a little bit of water, and come straight back out.
A member of security's arrived again, and he's chasing. There's no way he's going to be able to chase that dog off. Oh no, he's disgracing himself.
Oh, yeah. He's throwing a shoe at him. What's that all about?
And I'm afraid we had a squat there. Definite squat. He's throwing a shoe, and the dog is now in full sprint, and he's now down at third man, heading into the leg side. He's just doing laps of the ground.
He's still got his shoe off.
Yeah, and he's out at deep square leg. Still these two security folk, well, they're looking tired now, heading off after him, and the dog is simply having a nice bit of exercise, and they're going off for tea. Well, this has to be the first time, surely, that a dog has stopped play. Andrew, I'm going to run that past you.
And that is quality sports commentary, and it was on Thursday in southern India. Time now for a quick dummy and off for me too, but I will be back with an updated version of the Global News podcast later. If you'd like to comment on this podcast or the topics covered in it, you know where we are. Send us an email. The address is globalpodcast@bbc.co.uk. I'm Jackie Leonard, and until next time, goodbye.